This is Southern Fried Sports with BamaOnline senior analyst Travis Reier on your home for Alabama sports. Tide 100.9 and streaming on the Tide 100.9 app.
It is 11 a.m. on a Friday morning. Time once again for Southern Fried Sports on your home for University of Alabama Athletics. Tide 100.9 FM. Travis Reier, your trusty if not talented host of the program, with you each and every weekday morning from 11 a.m. until noon. The show, as always, brought to you by Peterbrook Chocolatier out there at 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. Easter rapidly upon us, coming up. April 12th, I believe. That's your Easter Sunday for 2020. And you're going to want to go ahead and get those pre-orders in. 205-752-0211. That's going to put you in touch with Heather, Emily, and the rest of the great staff there at Peterbrook Chocolatier. Joined, as always, on the program by executive producer Josh Smith, who together we combine to form the 60-Minute Man of Sports Talk Radio. Josh, out here on dreary old Oahu, we have somewhat cloudy skies this morning. We've got high winds in effect. Very windy here in Waikiki. Early on this Friday morning. I see, though, we're back home there in Tuscaloosa. Looks like we're going to have perhaps some sunshine, maybe as much as the entire weekend. Is that in fact the case?
If that's what we call this giant globe that we got hanging up in the sky that we really haven't seen much of Tuscaloosa here lately, then I think we might have had a trade-off there, Travis. But, hey, we're happy that we're going to have some sun here, especially with some of the, as far as softball, SEC home opener against Arkansas, as far as a series home opener, and then baseball over here as well of another series. So we're happy that we got some dry weather for that. But, I mean, hoping that, besides getting some good waves over there, that it won't hurt you guys too bad with the weather today.
Yeah, it may have a high surf warning. It may mess up my longboarding that I talked about here in the last couple of days. Look, if it takes us coming to Waikiki for Tuscaloosa to get sunshine, I guess we'll do it again. I guess we'll do that. That's the price we're willing to pay for our hometown there at Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We're willing to go that extra mile. But it was an interesting day, interesting night last night. We went back over to the Stan Sheriff Center even after having our hearts ripped out on Wednesday night as the Rainbow Wahine lost on a buzzer beater to the Gauchos of UC Santa Barbara. Went back over to the stand last night because volleyball, as you might expect, right? I mean, Hawaii volleyball, you would think that it's a pretty big deal over here. Well, it's a massive deal. And the Hawaii men's and women's volleyball programs, perennial powers on the national scene when it comes to collegiate volleyball. And so the men's team is in season right now. And the Hawaii men's volleyball team went into last night's match with BYU as the number one ranked team in all of men's college volleyball. Well, BYU comes over. BYU is the second ranked team right now in men's collegiate volleyball. So you had a huge match at the stand last night. 8,000 plus in attendance for men's volleyball last night at the Stan Sheriff Center. And let me tell you something. In terms of environment and the joint jumping, and as the kids would call it, being lit, the Stan Sheriff Center for men's volleyball, women's volleyball, I understand, is the same thing. It is above and beyond what you see at a lot of SEC arenas when it comes to men's college basketball. It was a fun night, man. It wasn't a fun night for the Rainbow Warriors, though. BYU did a number on UH last night, sweeping the Rainbow Warriors 3-0 at the stand. So they'll go at it again tonight. BYU, Hawaii again tonight. And then we'll have senior night for the Rainbow Wahine tomorrow night as Cal Poly visits Honolulu. So we're hanging in there. We're hanging in there out here in dreary old Oahu. 205-342-9904. That is the number to call if you'd like to jump on board with us on this Friday morning. We would love to hear from you. I'll tell you, we probably had a better night last night than Quinnen Williams, the former University of Alabama standout, superstar, defensive lineman, top 3 pick in the 2019 NFL draft. And I'm sure, knowing Quinnen a little bit, it was a very honest mistake that he made at LaGuardia Airport last night after he attempted to board a flight with a Glock in his possession and no New York State permit. But man, if you're going to make that mistake, and we're not calling Quinnen Williams a bad boy. I don't think that's part of this at all. But if you're going to make that kind of mistake, boy, New York State is not the place to do it. Plexico Burress had an unregistered weapon about 10 years ago. And Plex not only had an unregistered weapon, handgun, he shot himself in a nightclub. And for his troubles, he spent some time in the hole, in the joint, in the Crowbar Motel. So again, in New York State, they do not play when it comes to the weapons charges. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out for Quinnen Williams. I guess there were reports they were uncertain whether or not the Glock was actually loaded. I guess that could certainly play into the charges as well. But not a good night for Quinnen up in Gotham. Some other things we're going to get into today. We're going to talk some college basketball. That's right. College basketball season is not over. We'll continue to kind of look ahead to the upcoming weekend of SEC men's basketball. The Alabama men's team traveling to Columbia, Missouri for a matchup with the Tigers out there. And seeding still in play, not only in that 7, 8, 9, even 10 range that Alabama finds itself in, more likely than anything going to be 9, perhaps 10 in the SEC tournament when we talk seeding. But you got a logjam up there once you get beyond Kentucky. Kentucky 14-3 in the league, even after that loss midweek to Tennessee at Rupp Arena. Then you got Auburn, LSU, Florida at 11-6 apiece. Mississippi State, South Carolina still in that mix too at 10-7. So you got a lot of things to play out coming up this weekend. You got some potentially nice matchups around the league. Auburn really needing a win at this point, struggling here down the stretch to get the job done. Travels to Tennessee, a suddenly reinvigorated Rick Barnes team after that comeback from 17 down at Rupp earlier in the week. Tennessee hosts Auburn. That's an 11 a.m. Central matchup tomorrow morning. You've got Kentucky at Florida. Kentucky has already wrapped up the number 1 seed and the regular season SEC title. But the Wildcats travel to Gainesville, take on a Florida team that has certainly been playing better as of late. And then, again, in that 11-6 range, Georgia goes to LSU. And so when you look at it just in terms of on paper, you probably like LSU's chances, the best of those 3 teams, Auburn, LSU, and Florida, to kind of get the job done and perhaps get some help. Kentucky trying to avoid back-to-back losses, headed to Gainesville. Auburn really needing to get itself going here, but having to go on the road to Tennessee. And meanwhile, LSU faces a Georgia team that is now 5-12 in the SEC. And even with Anthony Edwards, a surefire top 2 or 3 pick for this summer's NBA draft, just not a team that has really over any extended period of time earned your trust in year 2 under Tom Crean. So you've got some interesting seeding potential there, really at spots 2 through about, I guess, 6, you could say, if you include South Carolina in that mix at 10-7. Not exactly sure how all the tiebreakers could potentially play out there. So you've got some games of importance. Unfortunately, on the women's side yesterday, the Alabama ladies, in pretty much a win and you're in spot at the SEC women's tournament, second round of the SEC women's tournament yesterday over in Greenville, South Carolina. The Alabama women win and you're in to the NCAA tournament. First time in 20-21 years that would have been the case. I mean, we're talking about a stretch, a drought in NCAA tournament play for the Alabama women that goes back to the late 80s. So you could really say it spans 4 decades now, 90s, aughts, the previous decade. Now we're into the 2020s. That opportunity. Really, exactly. The entire lifetime of young Josh Smith. And that opportunity perhaps goes by the boards. In a 68-61 loss to the Georgia Bulldogs, Charlie Cream, your Joe Lunardi of women's basketball bracketology there for ESPN, he had Alabama in a win and get a loss from a mid-major type team in a conference tournament, and Alabama gets in. This was Charlie Cream's scenario going into yesterday's game against Georgia. Well, Alabama drops the game to Georgia 68-61. Joni Taylor, former Alabama standout, now the head coach at the University of Georgia, really making a career off her alma mater at this point. But Charlie Cream places Alabama after that loss yesterday, sends Alabama from first 4 out to next 4 out and behind UGA. And UGA probably needs a win today over top-ranked South Carolina to get in. So that kind of tells you what Charlie thinks of UA's at-large bid hopes after that loss to the Georgia Bulldogs yesterday. LSU and Tennessee, on the other hand, with a couple of second-round wins on Thursday, solidified their spots, you have to think, in the NCAA women's tournament as the 6th and 7th league teams that are expected to make the big dance. Alabama, the game yesterday, the Alabama women's game yesterday was similar to the Alabama men's game on Tuesday night against Vanderbilt, in that the men and the women, with about 8 minutes to go, are about the same points, because you're talking halves in men's basketball and quarters in the women's game, at about the same point, essentially, relatively speaking, in the first half of both those games. Looked like they were in really good shape. Both had 5-point leads, weren't playing uphill, but you had runs by both the Vanderbilt men and the Georgia women to close out the first half of both those games. And from that point forward, the Alabama men against Vanderbilt, the Alabama women against Georgia, both playing uphill over the remainder of those games, and neither of those situations worked out to the good of the Alabama hoops programs. 205-342-9904. That's the Peterbrook Chocolatier studio line. We are expecting to have Pops on coming up at the bottom of the hour. And we've kind of we've sort of scouted this area out here for Pops, because Pops is coming back out with us in May for the oldest daughter's graduation. So Pops will be in tow. I think Pops is going to be out here for 5 or 6 days in mid-May, and that's certainly more than enough time for this town to endure Pops. But we've sort of done some scouting for Pops, so we've got some topics we'll hit him on in relation to his upcoming trip out here to Oahu and the lovely island. So we'll get with Pops on that at the bottom of the hour. Another topic related to college basketball, we'll ask Pops about this too. Tweeted this one this morning on the personal Twitter account at Travis Reier, TravisReier. You can pick any gym / arena to go watch a basketball game. I'm talking about from rec league to middle school to high school to college to the NBA. You can pick any gym / arena to go watch a basketball game. Where are you going? What's going to be your choice if you could do that? I'll tell you what would be interesting right now. Having gone to the BJCC recently to take in the boys and girls state championships over there in Birmingham, what gym arena in the state of Alabama would you pick to go watch a basketball game? If you're an Alabama fan, would you have to hold your nose right now and choose Auburn Arena? I think you probably would if we're just talking about going to a basketball game. Now, look, you may have a high school gym in the state that qualifies more in that regard. You may even have a middle school gym that is more along those lines. I know we got one of those on the list here earlier today. Christopher Canterbury, former North Ridge Jag hooper of note. He picked a middle school gym in Tuscaloosa. He went with Collins Riverside Middle School there in Tuscaloosa. And having watched the son play middle school basketball there and having watched the youngest daughter play middle school basketball there, that's a cool little gym, man. It's a throwback, that's for sure. It's a relic. It's archaic. But when you're talking middle school and high school basketball, it's the nostalgia, right? It's basically the movie Hoosiers, Hickory, the Huskers, the little bandboxes. Those are the things that grow near and dear to your heart at the high school level. And I think I'm at a point in my life where if I absolutely had to choose, I've been to Madison Square Garden, I've been to Cameron Indoor Arena, haven't been to Fog Allen at the University of Kansas. That's been a popular selection this morning as well. But if I had to pick, I would probably pick one of those high school gyms in the state of Indiana on a Friday night where it is packed to the absolute gills. You can't get another buttock in the gymnasium. I think that's the nostalgia coming out in an old fart, boomerish TR at this point. I think it would be a bandbox in the state of Indiana right now. Don't get me wrong, Cameron's awesome. Madison Square Garden, the most famous arena in the world, they'll tell you up there in Gotham. But right now, I think I would be fine somewhere in rural Indiana on a Friday night. That would probably be my choice, but we certainly got a lot of entrants on that list, and we'll get to those in depth maybe a little bit more. And we'll ask Pops about his favorite coming up at the bottom of the hour as well. Let's go to the Peterbrook Chocolatier studio line at 205-342-9904 right now and check in with Donald on this Friday morning. Donald, how you doing?
Oh, I'm still jealous of you, man. Damn it. I mean, I hope that coffee you're drinking out there is good and everything. But
they've got that special Hawaiian brew out here, you know. Yeah. Special.
Yeah, I've heard about that Hawaiian brew. You're right, it is special. And, I've never had it, but I've just heard about it.
It's not too bad.
No, it's not. But I want to hope you're enjoying your time out there. And I think you got family out there, don't you? One of your kids plays ball out there or something?
Yeah, our oldest daughter plays basketball at the University of Hawaii. So we have to come out here. You know, it's senior night tomorrow night, so we have to come out here, Donald. You know, I
wish they could have scheduled a game with Alabama. You know, either have her come back here to play a game or whatever.
They do that. I think with Savannah being a couple of things, with Savannah being a junior college transfer, you don't really have as much advance notice with a 2-year player coming in as you do with a high school player. And that is still a haul to go from here to Tuscaloosa. But yeah, it would have been neat.
Well, Bama's going out there next year to play basketball, so at the Maui Invitational.
Yes, Maui Invitational for the men's team. That's the premier event
out
here.
Deal with UNC again.
Yeah. Probably won't have to deal with Cole Anthony though. So that'll be a positive.
Carolina's going to be wanting to prove themselves after the bad year they had this year. But anyway.
Yeah.
I've got a bad feeling that the men's team's not going. Their season's going to end after they get done in Nashville the next week because I don't see them making the NIT from what I've seen and heard. I don't think they're going unless they win the SEC tournament. I just don't see them playing beyond Nashville. Also, I think even though the women lost yesterday, they still got a fighting chance to maybe make the women's tournament. The ESPN guy still has them as his first team out after the Georgia game yesterday. So
he actually Charlie Cream, if that's who we're talking about, we just talked about that. He updated that, and in his updated bracket, he had the Alabama women from first 4 out to next 4 out after that loss yesterday, and he actually has them behind Georgia now. And Georgia, you have to think, needs to beat South Carolina today to get in. So I don't think Charlie Cream is all that big on Alabama's chances. But, here's the thing about, the tournaments and conference tournaments and things like that. You've already got the SEC playing its conference tournament this week. You still have other conference tournaments that have to play out, both at the group of 5 level, the mid-majors, and still some Power 5 tournaments that have to play out here over the next week. So that makes it probably even tougher for Christy Curry and her team, because now you have to really sit around and wait and see how all these other tournaments play out. There are still scenarios where I'm sure Alabama could get in, but it had its fate really in its own hands yesterday. And that's what makes that loss particularly painful, because essentially that was, by just about every viewpoint you read, see, or hear, a win and you're in opportunity.
Well, I agree with that, everything you said, but I will say this. If you look at how they finished the season, and, it's like what Curry said yesterday, you don't base it on one day. You look at the whole body of work. Over the last 10 games, they were 7-3, which includes 2 wins over top 15 teams on the road.
Sure.
And the fact that they didn't have any bad losses on their schedule except for Hampton at the beginning of the year, first game.
Yeah.
That they're going to be right there in the discussion, I think, till the bitter end. And
they're going to be in the discussion.
With them going 8-8 in the league, the second toughest conference in the country, supposedly, or whatever. I don't know how they rank them. It's just hard to imagine them staying out of that thing.
Cream has them behind Georgia now, I guess in large part because, Georgia went 2-0 against Alabama this season, which could be a real problem for Alabama's resume if it gets stacked up against Georgia. It may not. The committee may say, look, Georgia's not relative to the discussion anyway, so that may not be a factor. But when you look at net and things like that, Georgia still, 10, 12, 15 spots below Alabama in the net ranking. So that may not be a relevant discussion to begin with.
Yeah, you're right. But Georgia also has lost 13 games as well. And
that's why it may not be relevant. Yeah, that's why it may not be relevant at all. You got anything else for us, Donald, as we get out of here?
No, just have fun out there and enjoy your time with your family, Barrett, and appreciate the time.
Hey, appreciate it, Donald. Always appreciate hearing from you here on the program. There he goes, Donald, on a Friday morning. Hey, when we come back, we're going to talk SEC quarterbacks. We've touched on this in the past, but where is the star power coming from at the position in 2020? A lot of production, a lot of accolades, a lot of high draft picks went out the door following the 2019 campaign. We'll preview the 2020 season at the quarterback spot when Southern Fried Sports returns on a Friday morning here on Tide 100.9 FM right after this. With you each and every weekday morning from 11 a.m. until noon. The show, as always, brought to you by Peterbrook Chocolatier out there at 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. As we exited the previous segment, we got into a little discussion about SEC quarterbacks for the 2020 season, and we've talked about it in the past, sort of touched on it a little bit. But now with spring practice, we are 1 week away from the start of spring football drills at the University of Alabama. That traditional work them out once before you send them on spring break that we get with the Alabama Crimson Tide. Nick Saban putting the Crimson Tide through that lone workout before spring break gets underway. And Alabama's certainly a big part of the quarterback discussion for 2020 because you're talking about Tua Tagovailoa moving on to the National Football League. Of course, Joe Burrow, your 2019 Heisman Trophy winner from LSU, expected to be the number 1 overall draft pick by the Cincinnati Bengals coming up in late April. Jake Fromm moves on from the University of Georgia. Felipe Franks moves on from the University of Florida, but he just moves over to the SEC West, where he will look over to take over as the starting quarterback for the Arkansas Razorbacks in year 1 under Sam Pittman. But kind of makes you wonder who's going to be that preseason first-team All-SEC quarterback when we get together for SEC Media Days in mid-July over in Atlanta, Georgia, Daddy. this time around? It's going to be Kellen Mond, Texas A&M. Is he your first team preseason all SEC quarterback? You're seeing a lot of love for Texas A&M in some way too early polls. Seeing Texas A&M in the top 10 of a lot of these preseason polls. How much is Kellen Mond being factored into that? Is Kellen Mond going to be the guy finally for Texas A&M? It seems like Jimbo Fisher has tried to make Kellen Mond into the A&M version of Jameis Winston. In other words, pure passing ability and those type of things. But I just watch Kellen Mond and I think, if you don't get this guy 15 design runs per game, you're really leaving a lot of his potential production on the table. But Kellen Mond obviously is a guy we're going to hear a lot about. Kyle Trask, after taking over for Felipe Franks at Florida, was certainly impressive. Jamie Newman, going to be expected to jump right in there as a grad transfer from Wake Forest and be the guy at the University of Georgia. Ryan Helinski, looking to build on kind of an up and down freshman campaign at South Carolina, had his moments. The game against Alabama, I think, was sort of indicative of Ryan Helinski's freshman season in Columbia, South Carolina. You saw some flashes of some things that led you to believe, this guy could end up being a 4-year starter in the SEC. And then you saw some things that made you wonder if the mobility is going to be an issue. He had a bit of a knee injury last year. He's not Johnny Manziel by any means to begin with. Can a guy like that, a total pure pocket passer, survive in this league in a day where it seems like more than ever, at least on a limited basis, quarterbacks have to be able to make some plays with their feet? Now, at the elite programs in the SEC, you probably can get away with it more, because protection isn't going to be as much of an issue. You wouldn't think at places like LSU or Alabama or Georgia. But South Carolina, they got enough people. They got enough legit offensive linemen and pass protection that can take care of a quarterback like Ryan Helinski. So kind of a to be determined there with Helinski. At Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin steps in. He's going to take over a situation with John Rice Plumlee, Matt Corral. You wonder about Plumlee's viability in an offense like the one Lane Kiffin employs. But as we saw here in 2014, Lane did just fine with Blake Sims. Matt Corral also still in that mix. What about Mike Leach at Mississippi State? Mike goes the grad transfer route once again. Gardner Minshew style, just kind of a reverse Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew is a native Mississippian who ended up out at Washington State with Mike Leach, had a huge season in 2018, and now a West Coast quarterback is coming to the Southeast, to Mississippi, with KJ Costello, the transfer from Stanford, expected to jump right in this summer. Now, Costello won't have the advantage of spring drills, so it's going to be a little bit of a tight window in terms of getting him ready for the 2020 season. You still have Garrett Schrader there coming off his freshman campaign, but no doubt about it, KJ Costello isn't headed to Starkville to really find himself in all that much of a battle with Garrett Schrader. He's coming in there as a potential early to mid-round NFL draft prospect to put up big numbers for a year under Mike Leach and then transition to the Sunday game. LSU, Miles Brennan. It's interesting with Miles Brennan, and you have to think Brennan has Joe Brady's stamp of approval with Brady moving on to the NFL, because I would have figured LSU would have been more active in the grad transfer market itself if that weren't the case. But right now, at least, it looks like Miles Brennan, who actually was a part of that same recruiting cycle as Tua Tagovailoa and Mac Jones. So this is a guy that's been in the program for 3 years and apparently has made enough of a positive impression that he's going to open the 2020 season as a successor to Joe Burrow. And even with Justin Jefferson and Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Thad Moss, leaving those playmaking positions that they assumed last season, still enough weaponry in that offense. Jamar Chase, chief among those guys, that Miles Brennan, similar to Mac Jones at Alabama, could certainly be that guy that could be that more traditional point guard type, the facilitator, the distributor, not necessarily a lead guard type, not necessarily a Colin Sexton type guard, as was Joe Burrow, as was Tua Tagovailoa, but Miles Brennan and Mac Jones both from more of maybe a Bobby Hurley type perspective at the point guard position, can get the ball to the people who need it and who can get to the paint at a very efficient and effective rate. So those are kind of your candidates looking ahead as we drive into 2020 spring drills. Tennessee with Jared Guarantano and a couple of other guys in that mix. How's that going to shake out up in Knoxville? That'll certainly be interesting as well. But yeah, we're still in search. We're doing some, is it astronomy you call it? The science of the stars, or we're looking for those next stars in the sky of the Southeastern Conference. When we come back, we'll check in with Pops here on a Friday edition of Southern Fried Sports, presented by Peterbrook Chocolatier on Tide 100.9 FM right after this.
Hey, life's rough,
Well, it is early in the morning out here, Pops. I mean, for crying out loud, it is 7:39.
There?
It's 7:39.
Yeah.
I'm looking at your daughter-in-law, the chocolate lady, right now, and she's got her spandex Olay on.
Oh, my God.
She's ready to.
Right
Yes.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. She's ready to go for her walk.
That ought to be interesting.
Well, the problem with the walks in Waikiki, Pops, is they can get expensive. They got a lot of stores down here. So it starts out as sort of this front to get some exercise, and then the next thing you know, you got bags carrying around. You know how that goes.
It's like carrying weights.
Yeah, Nana's good at that, right?
Oh yeah. Without no problem at all.
Yeah.
Let me stop here just for a minute.
We've done some scouting for you the last couple of days because you'll be out here in May for the oldest, your granddaughter's graduation from the University of Hawaii. And a couple of things, Pops. We found a great massage place for you that we're going to take you to. Little couples massage a couple of days ago because we know you're a big fan of those.
You won't find me at any couples massage place. That won't happen.
Bob, this isn't a Bob Kraft type deal. I mean, this is a legit
that's what I'm
massage
for.
Therapy, Pops.
I need one of those X-rated jobs.
Yeah. Get you maybe some deep tissue when we get you out here. Deep tissue work for Pops.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. The three of us went a couple days ago.
Oh, the three of us.
Sav, and me. We all went for Pops.
I wish you wouldn't tell me that.
Well, I'll tell you what. You ought to go just for the view from this place, Pops. Yeah. This place was like 34 floors up, looking out over the Pacific Ocean, Pops. Pretty nice, Pops.
That's nice, yeah.
And cheaper, by the way, than what you'll get a massage for in Tuscaloosa. Cheaper.
I like the $80 jobs. That's the one I like.
Yeah. We also spent some time out by the hotel pool a couple of days ago, and the thong alarm went off at the pool, Pops. The thong alarm went off.
Really?
Yeah. And Locklear said she was glad you weren't there because you would have made a real ruckus about it.
Oh. Hey, I'd love to experience a thong alarm.
They're not afraid of them out here, you know.
Oh no, not at all.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's just disappointing. I'm so old now.
You're not too old for a thong alarm, though. You know.
Oh, I'd love to participate in a thong alarm.
Yeah. Locklear said you would have made it just a total ruckus out of the situation.
With our drinks with the umbrellas in them, you know. And
Locklear's had a few of those. She had a blue one yesterday.
That's what I'm talking about right there.
She had her a blue one yesterday. Yeah. Looked like some windshield wiper fluid, but, she said it was good. Yeah.
Oh, I can see her right now.
Big wedge of pineapple on there for you, Pops.
Oh, Lord, that's delicious.
Mm-hmm. Fresh from the Dole plantation just up the road.
And they are interesting to see those pineapple plantations.
Yeah.
Because they keep them immaculate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's quite a sight. Just acres and acres and acres of pineapple.
Went to a Hawaii men's volleyball game last night, Pops. There was 8,000 people in the arena.
You're kidding.
No. It was 1 versus 2. Hawaii was 1, BYU 2. So it was the match of the century kind of in SEC football terms. 1 versus 2 last night.
Man, it sounds like it was a big rivalry.
8,000 people at $14 a ticket.
Oh, my.
That's pretty good for men's volleyball, isn't it?
Wow. That's unreal.
And they're playing again tonight, Pops, and they're expecting a sellout of 10,000 plus in there tonight for the So 2 nights of men's volleyball, you're going to have total crowd of 18,000 between last night and tonight. Yeah.
That's impressive. I know on the coast like in California and Hawaii, places like that, the volleyball is huge.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. The 2 biggest draws of University of Hawaii sports, biggest fan interest, there's no doubt about it. It's men's and women's volleyball. Women draw just about the same as the men.
Wow.
You know? Yeah.
Do they wear the thongs or what?
I don't know, Pops. I didn't ask them about that, Pops. I'm going to guess Title IX, you know. Yeah. But, Pops, we're also talking about today, if you could go watch a basketball game at any level, high school, college, pro, even middle school, at a particular gym / arena, where would you go, Pops, to watch a game? If you could pick one.
Well, I know it. I'm partial, but I've been to a college game Tuesday night at the University of North Florida.
Yeah.
At the Nest.
UNF Arena, the Nest.
The UNF Arena, they call it the Nest.
Yeah.
And I went to a high school game the week before, a playoff game at Robert E. Lee High School.
Yeah, your alma mater.
The alma mater, and I was so disappointed in the gym.
Yeah. Because
it looks like it hasn't been kept up since I was there in '65.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was really sad, but it needs a lot of work. But I enjoyed going. It's the first time I've been back over there in probably 40 years, and it was good to be there. I enjoyed both games, you know. But I've as far as basketball facilities, the Garden in Boston Garden, if I went to a pro game,
the old one,
you know, just because of the Celtics, you know. But
I figured you might go with Indiana State back around '79, where you could watch your boy Larry Wayne Bird.
Yeah, you're right about that. Larry Bird would. I'd go wherever he's at, and I did go to Orlando to watch him play when he was playing the Magic. And daggone, he didn't lay on the floor the whole game because his back was
bad
hurt.
back. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it's my advanced age at this point, Pops, but if I could pick one place, I think I would go to one of those Indiana high school pits on a Friday night. That's where I'd like to see a game, Pops.
Yeah,
Newcastle, Indiana, somewhere like that,
They take it serious,
Yeah. They'll put 8,000-9,000 in those arenas that they have in Indiana.
It's hard to imagine that many at a high school. Like at the high school game I went to over at Robert E. Lee, there might have been 200 people in the stands.
Yeah.
And this is a playoff game.
Yeah.
That's how sad it is. But Indiana is huge when it comes to high school and college basketball. But
now you're a Florida fan, so you've seen the Gators at the O'Connell Center, but did you also see them at Alligator Alley back in the day, Pops?
I never did go to Alligator Alley. Never did. I had that question asked earlier this year.
Yeah.
When this guy asked me, when I was at the Georgia-Florida game in Gainesville, O'Connell Center, he had been to Alligator Alley when it was back in the day. And he asked if I had been. I said, no, I never did go. I was just, that was back when Neil Walt played.
Mm-hmm.
Remember him? Played at Florida. And I would listen to him on the radio.
Yeah.
Back in those days. But I never visited Alligator Alley.
In Alabama, it's about to be a time of renovation for several venues. The BJCC in Birmingham, also known as Legacy Arena, set to undergo a massive renovation. Coleman Coliseum at the University of Alabama, set to undergo a major renovation. So kind of a time of transition for some of the primary venues at the college level anyway.
Yeah.
But, there are some good spots. Bartow Arena, the newer arena at UAB is a good place to watch a game. Yeah. Auburn Arena is newer, down on the plains, good place to watch a game.
How long, Travis, has the Coliseum been there at Tuscaloosa?
Coleman Coliseum, Pops, that's got to go back, I want to say, late 60s.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Most schools would have already replaced their basketball by then.
Yeah.
Their gymnasium.
Opened in my birth year, Pops, Coleman Coliseum did, 1968, so 50-plus years.
Yeah.
And it underwent a bit of a refurbishment
I remember
a decade or so ago.
I remember that.
But it didn't really impact the quality of the fan perspective.
No.
And the money that was spent on it. So, yeah.
It's surprising that it hadn't been, rebuilt or something.
Well, it was considered, I think. But you're seeing a lot of retrofits with the O'Connell Center, at UF, what it underwent. I think Coleman is going to be something similar to what Florida did there, Yeah,
they got the swimming pool and everything in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The whole 9 yards.
The UA auditorium is kind of across the campus, the athletic campus there off Bryant Drive, and it's undergone a renovation. So Coleman supposedly here soon, after Bryant Denny gets done again, you're going to see Coleman Coliseum upgraded. Well, Pops, we dropped a tough one out here Wednesday night. Lost on a buzzer beater, Pops.
Don't tell me that. I thought maybe they'd be playing tonight.
Well, no, we play. We got senior night tomorrow night with Cal Poly in here. But Wednesday night we were able to get out here in time to go to that one, and we trailed
2 in a row now.
We've lost 4 in a row, and after winning 6 in a row, we've lost 4 in a row. And we tried to steal it, Pops. We didn't play well enough the whole game, and then late we kind of Nana hit a 3 to get us to within 1, and then Jalissa Tongo hit free throws with 9 seconds left to put us up 1, and then with 4 seconds, Santa Barbara's point guard hits a buzzer beater on a runner to beat us.
Oh, a heartbreaker.
So senior night tomorrow night, maybe we could get Nana to videotape you, send a nice heartfelt message that they can show on the video boards tomorrow night for Pops.
Oh, Lord.
Video message from Pops.
Who are they playing tomorrow night?
Cal Poly, Pops.
Cal Poly.
Yeah, we beat them the first time around over on the mainland.
We need a victory tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night's senior night. That's it.
Yeah.
Last regular season home game. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. But I'm going to try to catch some college baseball over there
Oh,
at
okay.
Murakami Stadium. You got the Oregon Ducks in town, Pops, for the weekend. College baseball.
That sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to get over there.
Yeah, I do. You're right. Maybe when you're out here, they may still have some college baseball. We'll catch it then, too.
That'd be great. That'd be really good.
College baseball.
Yeah. I could do
Pops,
that.
Sure. Well, have a great weekend, Pops. Enjoy your lunch.
Well, y'all be careful, man.
All right.
And I'll talk to you
soon.
later.
There he goes, Pops. We're going to head to a final break. When we come back, we'll put a wrap on a Friday edition of Southern Fried Sports right here on Tide 100.9 FM right after this. Bryce Young mania officially in full swing starting 1 week from today. The nation's top overall player for the 2020 recruiting cycle. Jumping into that quarterback room. Mac Jones, not to be underrated, not to be undervalued. Mac Jones, the SEC's top-rated returning passer from the 2019 season. Talked about the quarterback turnover in the league. Mac Jones figures to be a big part of that talk as well. Well, you heard from Pops. Josh Smith, always doing a great job running the show here for us. And you got the lunch whistle today back there in Tuscaloosa. It's going to be Southern Ale House, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. Get by there for lunch right now. If you can't do that, get by there for happy hour a little bit later today. Talk about an awesome happy hour, not just in terms of drink specials, but an outstanding happy hour menu, food menu as well. Southern Ale House, 1530 McFarland Boulevard North. Until 11 a.m. on Monday, when it'll be a red-eye, jet-lag Travis Reier. Have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend, everybody.